Alright, so here is page 4 for Unit 2. I'm going to teach you how do we factor using the method of grouping, factoring by grouping when we have 4-term polynomials, okay? So again, when we're factoring something, we want the answer to be in this form, okay? So usually what happens here is we have a binomial here and a binomial here. So it has a bunch of steps. So here, I'm just going to list the steps out here. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make 2 groups out of this, okay? 2 groups. Okay, so I'm going to make 2 groups. I'm going to group the first 2 together, and then I'm going to group the last 2 together. Right now, it may look like it's factored because I have parentheses, but this is not actually factored. There's a plus sign in between here. This one, by the end, it'll be a multiplication. And remember, a factor means 2 things that are multiplied together that give you an answer. For example, let's say you have 42, then 6 and 7 are factors. 6 times 7 is 42. 6 plus 7 is not 42, right? So that's what it means when it talks about factoring. So anyway, first we're going to make 2 groups. Second step is we're going to factor each group. I'm going to factor out each group, or in other words, each binomial. Okay, so here first we made 2 groups, and now I'm going to focus on these 2 binomials. So if I look on here, this is m cubed plus 4m squared. So we see that there's an m squared I can factor out here. So there's a greatest common factor here of m squared. And then in this binomial, there's a greatest common factor of 3 and 12. I think 3 goes into both of them, which means that so I'm going to put the greatest common factor out in the front, so m squared. Okay, and then I'm going to put a parentheses, and then I'm going to divide out my greatest common factor. So here, if I take out an m squared here and m squared here, I only have m left, plus if I take out the m squared here, I have a 4. Okay, and then over here, bring down the plus sign. My greatest common factor is 3. So I have here, if I divide out the greatest common factor, so you have m plus 4. Okay, when you do this correctly, then you should always get the same thing in my parentheses. Okay, so we should get the same binomial. Okay, so we do m plus 4 and m plus 4. If you didn't get the same thing, then we did something wrong with my factoring. Okay, so that's step 2. And then step 3, what we're going to do is we're going to factor out the common. So common just means same. Okay, common binomial. Okay, so here again, so this is my common binomial. So that's, you just write it once, and so when you factor it out, you have this left over, which is m squared plus, and then 3. So with these 2 go away, so you have m squared plus 3, and you rewrite it right there. And that is my factored form. Okay, if you don't get the same thing, then we did something wrong with our factoring our binomials out. So let me try number 2. So I'm going to group the first 2, group the second 2, And then now I'm going to find the GCF, the greatest common factor here. And then I'm going to find the greatest common factor here. So the greatest common factor here is between 3 and 6. The GCF is 3 because 3 goes into 3 and 3 goes into 6. And also you have x cubed and then you have x squared. So the most I can take out is x squared. So 3x squared is my greatest common factor. So let me just divide this out. So you divide out the greatest common factor. So 3 divided by 3 goes away, x squared goes away, x squared goes away. So you just have x by itself here. And then you have here 6 divided by 3 is 2, so minus 2. And then the x squared goes away. Alright, and then over here, my greatest common factor between these two is 5, because 5 goes into 5 and 5 goes into 10. Okay, and then now I have, so we're dividing out by the greatest common factor. So you have x, negative 10 divided by 5 is negative 2. And if you notice, I have the same thing, so that's good. So now I write the common factor by itself, and then 3x squared plus 5 by itself. Okay, number 3. So I'm gonna just put this here just to see if I need it. All right, so number 3 we have, I'm gonna just group the first two, group the second two, and I'm going to see, well, I can factor out a 4 because 4 is common, and also I can factor out, the most I can do is an x squared. So I'm going to when I'm factoring out, I'm dividing it out. So 4x squared, 4x squared. So that's an x, just an x left over. And then 4x squared divided by 4x squared, that is a 1. And then you have 3 here, so you're going to factor out a 3 because that's common between both of them. And then so you have, so if you divide by 3, you have here x plus 1. And then that looks good. So I write that common factor by itself. Then you have here 4x squared plus 3. Number 4. So you have here 2x cubed plus 5x squared minus 12x minus 30. So now I'm going to go ahead and put a common, make a group here. And I'm going to make a group here, but make sure to carry the sign, carry the negative. Okay, carry the negative. So it goes inside the parentheses. And just know that there's still a plus sign in between, just like how there's a plus sign in our other problem. There's a plus sign here. There's a plus sign right there. But this one needs a plus sign there, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I am going to factor out the group 1. So there's nothing common between 2 and 5, but there is an x cubed and an x squared, so the most I can take out is an x squared. So if I divide by x squared, so that is 2x plus 5. And then here, what is a common factor? Well, 2 goes into both of them, but I want a number that's higher than 2. Maybe that'll go into both of them. I think 6 does. but you can always check in Desmos if you just type greatest common factor or GCF, parentheses, and if you do negative 12, and then you hit a comma, and then you do negative 30, it says that 6 is the greatest common factor. So, and then I cannot take out the x's, so I'm going to do 6, and actually I'm going to go ahead and do a negative 6 between both of them. Okay, so I'm going to take out a negative 6. So if I divide by a negative 6, so negative 12 divided by negative 6, that's positive 2. And then you have your x, negative 6. So negative 30 divided by negative 6 is positive 5. Okay, and there you go. I have the same thing in my parentheses, so you can factor that out. And that's it. All right, 2 more problems. So with these 2 problems, because it's multiple choice, you can maybe try to find your answers in Desmos by either graphing it or yeah, let me just show you if you want to just, you know, find your answers, and I'll do it both ways as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug my expression in my Desmos. Whoops. Okay, so I'm going to do 20a to the third plus 25a squared plus 32a plus 40. And then you want to be able to add the slider